The year was 2014, the same year I graduated from high school in a small rural town. My small group of friends were planning to take a week-long senior trip to the Big Apple, which would be entirely funded by this college advancement program we were all enrolled in. Awesome, right? Well, yeah, but in the same breath, a resounding no. I should have died on this trip on multiple occasions due to my complete disregard to stranger danger, but I'm only going to tell you one instance I had on this trip to keep it as short as possible. To put it plainly, my friend and I were almost trafficked by two men, but somehow we survived. Let's jump right into it, as the great Philly D once said. I would also like to provide more context. I mentioned our senior trip being funded by a college program to infer that there were chaperones present during our trip. But seeing as my friends and I didn't listen to authority very well, like every other freshly graduated high schooler, the chaperones are practically non-existent in this story. In fact, the story starts with my two closest friends. Let's call them Leo and Courtney, and I taking the wrong subway train purposely to lose our chaperone and the rest of the group. Mind you, we did this frequently and never got in trouble, but we didn't want to go back to our shabby hotel in the Bronx. We were going to check out the nightlife in Times Square on our own. While parading through street performers on the Strip, Courtney and I are stopped by two gentlemen. Things are a little fuzzy from here, but I'm not exactly sure how these two men started up a conversation with us in the first place. Luckily, Leo, the only male in our entourage, intervened and slid into the conversation with us and our newfound acquaintances. Looking back, I wonder if Leo was the only deterrent that stopped these two guys from nabbing both me and Courtney right off the street then. Like I said, the conversation was blurry at best. But I do remember how the two men looked and presented themselves. They both seemed like they were around the same age, possibly a little older, and they were both extremely polite and welcoming. The two men were also very generous and offered all three of us a beer from the multiple six-pack they were carrying out in public. May I remind you, we were clearly underage, and the drinking age is 21 years old in the United States if you weren't aware. Obviously, the legality of the situation was not a top priority, and the five of us began walking away from the populated Times Square to more desolated streets. As we walked down the eerily quiet streets of Manhattan together during the wee hours of the morning, we threw back the six-pack like nobody's business without a care in the world. This is when things get even more blurred, and my intuition is starting to kick in, thankfully. I felt much more intoxicated than I normally would after consuming a few beers, and I knew it was time to stop. I yeeted my partially full beer bottle into the water as we crossed the monumental bridge on foot. Things are only going to escalate from here. I slightly remember the men inviting only me and Courtney to a pool party back at their hotel, and I found it incredibly rude that they didn't invite Leo as well. I don't remember if Leo was even aware of the invitation at the time, but I do recall Leo grabbing my arm and Courtney's at the best moment possible. We had walked literally 20 blocks away from Times Square, and before Leo had pulled me away, I was walking into what seemed like an abandoned hotel with no electricity. Leo ran down the block with me and Courtney hand in hand as the two men we just met called out to us. I vaguely remember the men telling us all to wait here, and that they would call a taxi for us, but Leo continued booking it down the street and around the corner to safety. Once we rounded the corner and ran into a 24/7 convenience store, Courtney began to sink to her knees and collapse right in the middle of the store. She had finished her beer, unlike me, and was obviously then that they were laced with something. Both Leo and I quickly scooped her up before the store clerk saw what was going on, and I looked up the phone number of a nearby taxi service to get us back to our shabby hotel in the Bronx. The last memory I had that night was lifting Courtney's limp body into the back of a taxi while the driver stared at us inquisitively. Great memories. All three of us thankfully made it back to our group at the hotel unharmed. Hell, the coordinators didn't even have the slightest clue of what occurred. They were under the impression that we must have gotten turned around at the subway station, but would find the way back easily. As aforementioned, we had done the whole disappearing act in the subway on numerous occasions during the trip. But let's get back to the two guys we met that night. I'm not going to give away any identifying information on the duo, but I did do my own research and found that the two were actually brothers who ran a large prostitution ring in a state over. The brothers were tried on multiple heinous felonies and found guilty of some, but not all accounts. But hey, at least they're both behind bars. To the men who almost successfully trafficked both me and my friend in New York City during our senior trip, let's not meet ever again.